Hi everyone, it's Ardith. Thanks for stopping by today. Today I've got a video for the Fall Theme Week at Pretty Pink Posh. All week long we're celebrating my favorite season with all of the fall-themed products. And you get to celebrate too. There's a sale on all items in the fall section of the shop during the week. Check out the shop for full details. So lately I've been on a kick of making two similar cards each time I sit down to craft, trying to get different looks with the same products. I love the idea of getting more out of my stamps and dies, and also trying new techniques. I wanted to try and make a wreath with the new sunflower set. So I started with a 4x4-inch panel of white cardstock, and I used the Gina K Wreath Builder to help me with positioning. I taped it down to my mouse pad so that it wouldn't move. These sunflowers are pretty big, and I was pretty sure I would need to do some masking to even be able to make a wreath. So I chose the smallest flower and I put it down on the panel. And I was right. I couldn't fit all 8 flowers without masking, so I stamped 4 to begin, by skipping the corner positions in the wreath builder. You can see how close together they are. Then I cut 2 masks from some full-back sticky notes, and I covered 2 of the flowers. You could cut 4 masks and mask them all at the same time, but it's easy enough to stamp like this and then move one of the masks and stamp again. These flowers have enough variation in the petals that you can find the bigger and smaller gaps and easily match up the mask to the flower. I worked my way around, moving the masks and stamping that second layer of sunflowers until I had them all stamped. And then I started coloring them with my Copic markers. Copics are really my go-to. I'm no expert in shading or blending or anything, but I feel pretty comfortable that I know the colors and I know I'll get pretty consistent results. I'll show you how I colored one sunflower. I used a bright yellow for the petals that are at the front of the flower, and then I went back in with a deeper yellowy orange on the petals that are behind those front petals or in the shadows. I also used the darker marker on the flowers that are in the corners. Because of the masking, they look like they're behind the first 4 flowers that I stamped, so they would be in the shadows a bit more. I left some white highlights on the petals, which is an easy way to add the look of more dimension, and then I colored the center with 3 brown markers. I went over the whole center with the lightest brown, covered about a third of the bottom left side with the mid-tone, and then a smaller strip of the darkest. Then I went over the whole thing with the lightest again, and I added some texture by adding dots of the darkest brown. When I had all the flowers finished, I went in with quite a deep orange, just tiny flicks in the shadowy areas, to add more depth and contrast and give these flowers some more life. I added some aqua marker all over the background. When I'm doing a background like this with Copics, I'm not always successful getting it perfectly flat and smooth. So rather than try and fail, I just use a different method. I put dots of color all over the background until it's pretty much covered. This method adds texture and interest as well as color. I added some darker dots to the edges for more interest and then toned them down a bit by going back over them with the lighter marker. To finish the card, I glued the panel to a white card base, and I added a little thanks sentiment from False Signs and some of the coppery jewels from the Harvest Mix. Okay, so that was Copics. I'm comfortable with them, but sometimes comfortable can start to feel like you're in a rut. You know what I mean? So I stamped another panel. This time I didn't use the wreath builder, which meant I could use a full 4¼ inch square panel, and that gave me a bit more room. I used a similar turn technique, but this time I just used the corner of my MISTI. I won't show you all the stamping, but I did want to show you this. I had cleaned the stamp and placed it on my panel of watercolor cardstock, and it was there long enough that the cardstock got a bit damp. So my first impression was not good, at all. I continued on, turning the panel and stamping until I had 3 good impressions, and then without moving the stamp off the MISTI door, I dried the panel with my heat gun, put it back in the MISTI, and stamped the flower in the first position, and this time it was perfect. Then I did the same masking I did on that first card, and I created a similar wreath. Again, because the panel was slightly bigger, I had a bigger opening in the middle of my wreath, and I was able to add in some leaves as well, which will give me a chance to add some green to this card. The best part was that once I got the 2 masks down correctly in one corner, they stuck together and I could move them as one piece each time I turned the panel, and this saved me figuring out how to place the mask each time. So here comes the part where I kicked myself out of my Copic coloring rut. I used my Waffle Flower water media mat and some re-inkers from Catherine Pooler to do some watercoloring. Now, this is not a medium I feel 100% comfortable with, especially because when you watercolor, it always looks much better once it's dry. And I don't always have the patience for that, and I get worried about how bad it's looking while it's wet. But hey, learning is what it's all about, right? I used a Nuvo Aquaflow water brush. I find it has a nice firm tip and it's easy to color with. I spent a lot of time just getting the feel of how much water to add to the drops of reinker in the palette, and I didn't even consider mixing colors in the palette, just on the panel. I started with the green leaves and then I did the brown flower centers. I had some trouble getting the feel of those browns and getting it to move around, so I'm still feeling like I need some practice with this. But once I got to the yellows and oranges, I got into a bit of a groove. I covered each flower with yellow, and then I went back in with some of the orange to add some shadows and texture. I skipped over flowers so that each one had time to dry before I did the one that was touching it. It wouldn't matter with the yellow, but I was trying to get the orange into the shadows, and I just wanted it to stay where I put it. This time for my background, I used a deeper blue, and I did try to get a smooth, even coverage over the whole thing. The way to do that is to make sure you have a wet edge and don't let it dry. I find this hard because I work around the panel, so while the edge I'm working on stays wet, the one I started with starts to dry. I just try to make sure that that edge is a very small area, and then I do my best to blend it to get it as smooth as possible. To finish this card, I kept the panel at 4¼ inches square so it covers a whole card front. I added 3 thanks this time since my center area was a bit bigger, and some green jewels from the Harvest Mix. So which one do you like better? Let me know in the comments below. I like aspects of each, and I'm eager to get more practice in with my watercoloring. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up below and subscribe to my channel for more inspiration. Shopping links are below in the description and also on my blog. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time!